some people meditate a lot better when they're moving.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's why I love the movement practice. Like, when we're doing the flows, it's like, that's a time I can guarantee I'm not going to be thinking about anything else. And then there's also like a breathing scheme, like yoga, inhale when you go up, exhale. It's the reverse. It's exhale when you go into a movement because it's usually more strenuous. So it takes like the weightlifting approach of like exhales, you drive the concentric, and then inhales, you leave it. And then when you start to fuse, when you're leaving a motion and you're inhaling, then when you go right into another one, you're exhaling. And then you can keep that flow. And then whenever I incorporate my breath into that, it's like, I know I'm not going to be thinking about anything else. I'm going to be absorbed on performing these technical details and timing my breath perfectly. So those are like the one or two things. And I know my body's moving, but my mind's still not.
What's up, y'all? DFoss back with the LT360 Podcast, and we're live in the flesh with my man Finn.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Me and Finn worked together for a short period of time, and we came together, it must have been almost a year ago.
Yeah, wow, I guess so.
Pretty fast, right?
Yeah. Holy crap, I was not expecting that, yeah.
And I think the first time we met was actually at Nick Tuminello's basically like seminar that he did at the gym.
Elevate Movement, I think, was before that, right?
Was that before that?
I think so.
And then, no, I think I met you.
I think Elevate was kind of like my first intro.
Okay.
To
and then you came back for
yes, sir.
The NT Loop thing, or Nick Tuminello. Crazy. And then you started working with us.
Yeah.
And then you left us.
That did happen.
That did happen. So Finn is a fit pro. He is a yoga instructor, and he is a movement specialist on his way to being a movement guru.
Wouldn't go that far, but I'll take
it. Finn, where are you originally from? Let everybody know.
I'm originally from South Orange, New Jersey. I lived there for about 5 years of my life, and then I've been pretty much a Florida native ever since.
Yeah. But what part of Florida did you move to first?
Boca.
You did?
Yeah.
You've been there?
Went to high school here, went to college in Jacksonville, and then came back here after.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Did you like Jacksonville?
Loved it, actually.
Really?
Yeah. It's got a forest, which
definitely don't have to.
Yeah, exactly. So I like that a lot, and it also had some really nice beaches. And I kind of spent most of my time there, and either in the classroom, the gym, or the forest, or the beach. Okay. Yeah. So
Four spots.
Yeah, I got everything I needed, so it was very nice.
No, that's cool. I have not been to Jacksonville yet. Actually, PC's not going anymore because he's hurt. But Haley, Alfredo, and
Deca.
Yeah, they're going to Deca Fit Jacksonville this weekend.
Yeah. So there's some really cool camp spots.
Yeah.
I'll tell them some, and even not camp spots, but there's just like it's like where a forest meets a beach.
Ooh.
And it's really, really, really cool. Cool. There's a lot of spots like that, and not many people go to them. So it's like, it's just a cool place to hang around.
I might try to sneak up there.
Yeah.
Don't say anything.
Highly recommend it. They're competing. Cool. You're relaxing on the beach camping.
Oh, man. So I actually went and took Finn's class this morning down in Wynwood, Miami, the place of many things.
Yep. Chaos definitely being one of those.
Yeah, for sure. But it's an artistic hub for sure in the Miami area. It's really cool.
A lot of things going on in that area for sure.
And not just like, everyone thinks of it for like the graffiti and the artwork, but the creativity in food and cuisine, the creativity in
music, big music scene.
Yeah, music is huge.
Underground too. Like everyone, there's a lot of like major venues there, but there's a lot of like just like local shows that I've heard about from other people in class, and it's like it is like a nice, cool underground scene of cool music.
There's definitely a community.
Yes,
but there's so many outside people always like poking their head in because it's kind of a touristy spot now at this point.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's cool. I love going down there. And he's over at the Republic of Movement in Wynwood, if you're not familiar with it. It's very cool. I mean, like I only went for the first time last week, even though I wanted to go for
Yeah.
months, my Saturdays finally opened up a little bit. So it's super interesting. Like the minimalistic approach to it is super cool. It's inviting. The people were cool.
Yeah. Great community.
Yeah, you can tell. Just everyone, hey, what's up, man? What's your name? How you doing? Blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah. My name's this. Providing like tips and tricks, and then also just the nature of the class that you guys do. It's not necessarily like, all right, just go do your own thing. Like it's very intertwined. Like what they were doing, basically playing horse or skate.
Yeah.
With the movements, like. I love that. That's cool. I can't wait
so
to get to that point.
Yeah. You know, when I first started going there, same thing. It was like I was following Ito's blog, kind of the teacher I learned from, Ito, and I was following it for a year, and I just was so hesitant going to Miami. I was like, I have no business going there. Don't want to drive. Don't want to handle the chaos. For those who don't know, the drivers in Miami, a little bit wild, so it can be stressful going there.
So bad.
So I was very hesitant to go. Same thing. I was only going Saturdays, and I thought the same thing. And then like, the more you come, the more you kind of build up a vocabulary of movement. And then now, once you have a base words to fill your dictionary, you can start playing with the words and making sentences and having a flowing conversation like we're doing now.
Yeah, or flowing the movements together, like you were showing me to, do the.
Yeah, create some fusions.
Yeah, exactly. I like that word too, like a fusion of. You think about like food fusions all the time, but you don't use that necessarily in some like movement expression.
Yeah, I mean, you guys were touching on it a little bit, but I think you had a different name for it. You call it medleys.
Yeah, for sure.
And same thing with that. You can't necessarily you're not going to stop a front raise halfway and then go into a shoulder press. You know what I mean? So it's like
that's a valid point.
And in terms of like crawling patterns or rolling patterns, it's a lot more accessible to be able to stop it halfway through and fuse it with something else.
True, because there's like a beginning and an end to every move, but you can flow them or fuse them together in a way where it doesn't appear that's the case.
Exactly. Yeah. And then that's kind of the path we're taking the students down is that path of this endless flow where it really looks like you're not stopping until the end. There's no like dead points. You're in constant motion, moving from one thing to another. That's the improv.
Yeah, improvisation. So it's isolate, integrate, and improv.
Yep.
Okay.
So what you did Dylan kind of did 2 movements on its own, rep them to the point where he was comfortable with it. And we built upon it last week as well. Yeah. And then after that, he integrated the 2 movements. So he still passed through the squat in between, but he shortened the time he was in the squat. So it was not necessarily a fusion because you finished both of the movements in their entirety. Yeah. But you combine them together, which is integration.
Yeah. So then it starts to, as you get more comfortable with it, and I could see it and I could like think of it, but I wasn't necessarily at the point where I could fuse it together and make it look to someone else.
And that in itself, like what I was telling the students today, is that in itself is a skill of being able to visualize a movement and being able to, I just learned how to juggle recently.
I did see that.
Yeah, and I was practicing for like a year with just 2 balls, and it never really clicked. And then I saw someone juggle really well, 3 balls, and it just clicked. Like now I had that impression in my mind, very clear. Like I could visualize the movements of the person's hands, the trajectory the balls were going. And then when I went to go do it next time, it wasn't like, oh, I could juggle nonstop for a minute, but now I understood how to do it. And then when I would mess up, I'd be like, okay,
that was what I did wrong.
I look back into the image in my head, and now I know, okay, I know what I did wrong. I can adapt and do it again.
No, that's a good point. And it goes to show that people learn in so many different ways, which is definitely something you pick up on it, like in the fitness realm whatsoever. You learn how to communicate so many different ways. Because some people need to be touched and tactile cued. Other people need visuals, and they need to see you do it. I think of it like the drumline effect, right? Where he didn't have to read music; he could just watch you play it.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, boom, and he would be able to do it.
There's definitely like people have their inclinations to which way they learn, but I always try to reiterate that all of them are skills that can be developed.
Valid.
So like, yeah, maybe someone's way better at learning visually, but that doesn't mean you should never not challenge yourself to learn just auditorily, right? Because they're all pieces of the puzzle. Definitely go towards where you're naturally inclined. You know, like same thing. I'm a very visual person. I can watch a movement, copy it very well. But when you just do that, there's some details that are left out, you know, because you're my teacher, Sean, he's the lead teacher at Republic of Movement. He was out of town. That's why I was covering all the classes.
I was going to say, I haven't gotten a chance to meet him yet. But I'm excited.
But he talks about movement in the terms of the 3 Chinese treasures. So it's the, I don't know the Chinese translation at all, but it's basically, it's the details, the essence, and the energy. So the energy would be like the motor of the movement. What's driving the movement? The essence would be like, how does the overall movement feel and look? And then the details would obviously like be the details. Your hand needs to face this way. You need to be lifting your heel, so on and so forth. So when you learn a movement and you connect to it visually, you're most of the time just capturing the essence on that first thing. And then a lot of times you need the details cued auditorily. Or, you know, or you need someone to really break down and slow it down and show you this detail to focus on.
Every position.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then all those things can be conveyed through the different senses, but most often or not, you're going to convey the essence of the movement by like really looking at it, focusing it, taking it, and then developing like juggling. Yeah. I had the essence of what it was like to juggle the 3 balls. And now in my training, I'm working out the details.
Gotcha. And then what would be the energy or the flow? What would be the driver behind juggling?
So the driver behind juggling would be the arms, right? So there's definitely a focus on you locking into the balls and tracking them with your eyes, but the arms are doing a certain trajectory, right? You have to create kind of this half C shape with your hand to give the balls the proper pathway so they don't hit each other. You find a rhythm. And like the arm swings we were doing today, although it was brutal on your shoulders, the motor is the spine because you're just twisting the chest and you eventually let the arms be very, very loose.
Valid point. Most of our drivers are core and hip related.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's interesting. You don't realize how much, like 5 years ago for you, explain as little as you can the difference between how you look at someone moving now versus 5 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Like
first, let me figure out where I was 5 years ago. Let's see.
You were in like Thailand or something.
No. I think I was in like high school. So
how old are you right now?
I'm 21.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. So I was in high school. I was about 16.
Made me feel old. Right?
How did I?
You couldn't even think about it.
Well, I definitely was thinking about it a little bit. So that was just when I came off like 8 concussions, and
you were a lax player.
I was the lacrosse player. I got concussions doing different things, but like the last couple were from lacrosse.
So real quick, when someone walks onto a lacrosse field, you automatically, same thing with me with basketball, you're like, oh, this person's trash, or like, damn, that person's elite. Like you have that ability, you have the ability to watch someone hold a stick or just even like walk or jog or warm up. And as an athlete, that's right. You're even, as an athlete, you understand that earlier and earlier. How to kind of look at someone's athletic ability based off of minor details that you can see.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's a whole new world now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Well, it's just I'm thinking about a lot of different things that like I wasn't thinking about. I don't even think I was analyzing competition. I mean, I was done playing, but I definitely noticed like that was right around the age where I noticed like how different I felt exercising daily. Because I had like a, you know, I would do lacrosse. I'd practice for lacrosse when I was training it. I do like weightlifting because, you know, the team that was required, but it wasn't really something I was interested in until my concussions just gave me this very dense brain fog. And I noticed like if I exercise, that fog, it didn't go away completely because I was still healing from the brain damage, but like it definitely minimized it. So I started to notice really the power in like exercising. Yeah.
Interesting. It's crazy how that has probably changed your journey into what it is now.
For sure. But I wouldn't be here today without it, so I'm grateful for it. You know,
true.
Like I wouldn't have appreciated movement as much unless I had it taken away. You know, we don't really appreciate things until they're gone. And you take them for granted. So it's like I lost my ability to learn, to catch, to throw, to run, to jump, all basic things. So I was like, wow. What, like I was a shitty student, you know, I didn't give a crap about school. And then I like wasn't able to like retain what you just said to me, a sentence I read. So I was like, wow, like I want to be able to learn things, you know, and then like that fueled an internal drive to just learn things.
Anything you could.
Anything I could. And I found that I didn't resonate with the way I was taught in school. So I ended up teaching myself. And when I did, like, I got the best grades.
All right, I'm just going to go home and teach myself.
Yeah, so, like, my senior year of high school, concussions were, like, mostly healed by that time. I went to PBSC instead, so I dual enrolled. And 4 classes a week. All my friends were at school from 8 to, 3. So I had all that time to do my assignments. And I noticed same thing in terms of like brain production. Like if I went to the gym and then studied,
way better.
My ability to focus was so much more effortless. And that was also the time I started my seated meditation practice, which same thing. Like I always struggled with reading. Like I had dyslexia my whole life. And it's like the ability to like meditation is just, you're training yourself to focus on something very subtle. So then when you're not meditating and you're focusing on something more tangible, it becomes a lot easier. So like reading and like paying attention in school became a lot easier once I started meditating and exercising before.
That's powerful. I think most people don't appreciate the nature within us that we have to move. And that in and of itself is what is driving people to get bored with the work that they're doing or to want to get sidetracked and distract themselves on Instagram.
Yeah.
And you think about the nature of most people's like societal like life, 9 to 5, you wake up, most of them are dealing with some sort of kids in the morning and then they hop in their car and they're boom, they're gone.
Yeah.
So when you get to work, you have yet to exercise anything in your brain. You've had to exercise anything from a
you maybe walked a little bit, but that only goes so far.
But it wasn't a focused,
Yeah, you're not focusing on walking like barefoot. You're not like, how does it feel when I place my heel down, then my pinky toe, then roll onto the big toe,
Exactly.
Can I spread my toes with each step, It's
you're compensating a lot in your movement, and you're just going about it. You're just figuring out the least resistive way to go through it.
Yeah, Ito talks about it as kind of like the Western society is kind of stuck in this Descartes' mind, the philosopher, where it's like there's no life without the mind. Like in terms of the mind-body complex, it's like your life is your mind, Yeah, I think therefore I am, and I think we're very stuck in that terms of things. It's like, we go get a job where, we're challenged somewhat intellectually, but more on the front of just gathering intelligence rather than like understanding knowledge truly, because there's difference between
wisdom.
There's difference between like us like studying like some sort of exercise technique and then actually like doing it 1,000 times and knowing like the mistakes that come with the process of trying to improve your bench numbers, trying to, you know, smooth out the details of your crawling, trying to balance in a handstand, you know, it's like.
That's a good point. Like you can sell insurance because someone told you how much to sell it for and tell you what to tell the customer. But if you haven't gone through your own battles with insurance and understood how it affects you from a health standpoint, from your car standpoint, from your renter standpoint, then you may not have no empathy for someone that's calling in and talking to you about it.
Exactly.
Like I can't, you wouldn't be able to show me any movements in class today that you didn't try and go through and experience and fail at, because then you're just talking off of a weak foundation.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe I would have been able to half-ass it, you know, and just show you the thing, but I wouldn't have been able to break it down, you know, because
or
it's like,
help me if I wasn't doing
exactly.
it
If you're like, you know, like, why is my leg doing this? Well, if I've never done it, I have no fucking idea. You know, I've never done it. My leg's never been in that position, so how can I give you advice in it? You know.
And what did I say to you today when you told me to add more weight to my squat? Do you remember what I said?
Oh yeah. What did you say? Like take it day by day?
I said every moment is unprecedented.
Yeah.
So my idea behind that is that I had different food in my system today. I did something different last night. I did different workouts throughout the week, and I have a different one planned for tomorrow. So I always try to teach people on that concept too, of like everything is relative. Everything is unprecedented. Yes, you played probably hundreds of lacrosse games, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or you've probably worked on handstands thousands of times, but every time you do it, there's something different.
There is, 100%.
Absolutely. There's something different, whether it's the thought going into it because you failed the last one versus got the last one.
Or what you ate, what you trained before, so on. Accumulative fatigue throughout the week.
The person nearby, it has an energy that's different, and literally it all plays a factor. So with that, the idea that stillness is an illusion and never happens came to me. AJ says that all the time, but it came to me when you said, one, the fusion of movements, and two, the meditation. So what is your thought process, or what do you think when you hear stillness is an illusion? How does that make you feel? What does that make you think of?
I mean, it's a word like stillness, especially nowadays when like meditation is becoming more popular. It's like these words hold value, and that value is scaled differently on the individual. You know what I mean? Because it's like if someone hears stillness, their mind's probably going to go to a certain idea or concept that they attach to the word stillness, and that could be totally different. Although it's the same word, it has the same dictionary definition,
but to everyone
it holds a different value.
Yeah.
So stillness, in a sense, I would say is an illusion, because, you know, without movement, there's just death. You know, it's like blood's always moving through your cells. I mean, you see, like when you get a cast off your hand, it's disgusting. It smells like the flesh is rotting. You know what I mean? So there definitely has to be movement within everything. But
just because I'm still doesn't mean that things within me are still. Just because the things within me may be still doesn't mean the world around me has stopped moving.
Yes, and there's it's a verb in the it's a verse in the Bhagavad Gita, kind of the book that yoga came from, the principles of yoga, and it says there's two types of meditation. It's action within inaction, and then action in inaction. So what that means is, like, I could be sitting still in meditation, but my mind's racing. I'm thinking of what I ate for dinner, what I'm going to do after the meditation, or there's my body's moving, but my mind is still. It's absorbed on what I'm doing. And I think that is probably the closest place to stillness you can get internally, of there's not nothingness, but there's absorption on one, maybe two things.
Total focus.
Total focus
Awareness.
on a task.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I like that.
So it's like some people meditate a lot better when they're moving.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's why I love the movement practice. Like when we're doing the flows, it's like that's a time I can guarantee I'm not going to be thinking about anything else. And then there's also like a breathing scheme, like yoga, inhale when you go up, exhale.
Awesome.
It's the reverse. It's exhale when you go into a movement because it's usually more strenuous. So it takes like the weightlifting approach of like exhales, you drive the concentric, and then inhales, you leave it. And then when you start to fuse, when you're leaving a motion and you're inhaling, then when you go right into another one, you're exhaling. And then you can keep that flow. And then whenever I incorporate my breath into that, it's like I know I'm not going to be thinking about anything else. I'm going to be absorbed on performing these technical details and timing my breath perfectly. So those are like the one or two things. And I know my body's moving, but my mind's still in that moment.
Your mind is one with the body. It's absorbed in that. I like that a lot. So stopping your body gives you ability to tune into your mind, and moving your body gives your mind ability to tune into that.
And not to say you can't become still seated.
No, valid.
Yeah. But it's a lot harder. It's a lot harder.
So speaking on that, you've obviously spent a lot of time around monks.
A good amount of time.
Yeah. More than the average person around here.
I remember when I first started working there, I was talking to you guys about it, and they're like, yeah, wow, that's really cool. And it's sometimes like, just because, my girlfriend did the same thing, and,
You're around someone a lot that has also done that.
Exactly. So then when I, tell it to you for something, they're like, wow, I've, never heard of someone doing that before. I was like, oh, really? I was like, that's not a normal thing,
Wait, so you haven't?
Yeah.
So
what have you been doing?
Explain that process. Why did you decide to go do that? How did the opportunity come about?
Yeah, so like I said before, my concussions, it was a very eye-opening experience of I'm not in control of my mind. And it was stressful because one, it was the mind just wasn't working properly. The chemicals were all out of balance.
Efficiency was way off.
Yeah, so I started my own meditation practice, just reading some books and reading about it, how to do it, and I found even to that small extent it helped a lot. And I did that for my whole senior year of high school. I backpacked across Europe and kind of lost touch with a consistent practice, and got lost in partying a little bit as I went to college. Still did it every now and then, but I made a lot of progress in terms of toxic behavior I was engaging in, just negative thought patterns that I wanted to improve upon. I made a lot of progress, and then I noticed if I don't meditate every day, because there was a point where I was meditating in the morning, partying at night, because I got really bad social anxiety, so that was a reason I wanted to go party, to challenge myself on that weakness. And to do it, I would have to meditate before.
Gotcha.
Just to kind of get out of my own head.
Yeah. This is cool. I'm gonna go do this as an experience to learn, to get better at it.
Yeah, and that's I'm all about doing stuff you're terrible at. That's a reason I became a teacher. I'm definitely afraid of public speaking. So it's I was well, good way to challenge that, just teach. So
it's funny. I think about how deathly scared I was to present in high school. It's so funny.
But it's different because you don't give a shit about that. Now you're you're sharing stuff that you're passionate about. It rolls off the tongue a lot easier. So I did that, and then towards the end of college, I was I'm really unhappy with the kind of the lifestyle I was living. My goal in college was to get more into meditation. I felt like I lost it. So towards the end of my first year of college, I was okay, I'm diving back into it, started reading a ton of books about Buddhism, about different kind of trains of thought in yoga, because there's a lot of different lineage. They place focus on different parts in meditation. And then I met my girlfriend. She was also reading a meditation book. And then two totally opposite sides of the spectrum in terms, like both were about like meditation and spirituality, but they were coming from totally different fields.
Interesting.
So I was like, oh shit, like this is really interesting. She looked at my book and was like, wow, this is really interesting. You know, so it's like, so there's basically 4 main branches of yoga. There's karma yoga. So it's the yoga of service. They talk about it a lot to clear your mind, right? You serve others. And then that's like, we were talking about like moving and having your mind focus. And I've also found like same thing when I'm teaching, like I'm absorbed in my students. Like I'm not thinking about, unless I'm really hungry, I'm not thinking about like what I'm going to eat. You know what I mean? So like
you may have been thinking about sleep today.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Fridays, Saturdays are pretty tired. So, you know, like that's a way to like hone and focus your mind. It's meditation yourself. And then bhakti is like more on the devotional side. So like prayers, worship. So like she had a book about bhakti, and then I had a book about Raja, which is kind of like the science of introspection. And that's where under a subcategory of Raja Yoga is Hatha Yoga. So most yoga classes are some sort of form of Hatha Yoga. And inside of Hatha Yoga is pranayama, breath work, and meditation is in Raja Yoga. So I was like really into like stillness practice, introspection, like why am I telling myself certain things about the way I'm acting? You know, like we have these narratives that run through, like I'm bad for this reason. Why am I telling myself that? You know what I mean? So I was really into that side, and she was really into more of like the devotional side of like serving, like with her heart, like just like serving, like for her, like serving others is just so effortless. But like sitting down and quieting her mind is extremely challenging. Where like for me, it's really hard to be like outgoing. But I love to sit still and be quiet. You know what I mean? So it's like I was in my inclination, she was in hers. She wanted more of Raja Yoga, I wanted more of Bhakti. So it was like a good fit. And then, like, you know, by divine ordinance, there just happened to be a monk coming to my college that day. Like he was just traveling through to Texas, and we got like a flyer for this club, of this Bhakti Yoga club, and she was reading like a Bhakti Yoga book. I'm like, we should go check this out, you know? I heard about it, like I was too nervous to go on my own.
Okay.
So
we
went, and I'm not sure how long he was a monk for, but he was a brahmachari, so he was fully renounced, like didn't have possessions, was following regulatory principles, so like no drug, no sex, no gambling, and then you know, meditating for at least like 2 hours a day. Engaging in some sort of devotional service. That's kind of like the principles that follow this lineage. Okay. And he just said some stuff that, you know, really resonated. Like I'll never forget one thing he said was, this guy was like a little bit of a spaz, but he was asking like good questions at the same time. Okay. So he's like, if you think nobody's the body, then do you see color and race? And you know,
there's always somebody else.
Yeah, right. It was a good question. Just the way he said it was like very silly. So something he said was so interesting. He's like, to not see race or like color of your skin is like ridiculous. Like there's so many like different just like
tones.
There's different there's so many birds, right? There's different species of birds. It's like the same thing with humans. Like we're just another animal, and it's like there's a bunch of subspecies, different adapted humans. So it's like, why? And then he kind of tailed it into like reincarnation. It's like we're just in this body for one life, and then we move on to another body, either in a different planet, same planet. So it's like you putting on a shirt for a day. Like that's your body. You're wearing it for one day, one life. So he's like, why would I judge a person just because they wear an orange shirt for one day?
Damn.
You know?
He simplified the shit out of it.
Right? And then like the next day, I'll probably wear an orange shirt too. So why would I judge this person or think they're less than me just for the shirt they happen to wear on that day?
Crazy.
And yeah, that was my reaction too. I was like, wow, that was
you were just wearing it for a lifetime, but
you're just wearing your flesh bag for a lifetime.
in the larger perspective, that's a nanosecond.
Mm-hmm. Damn. And it like was really like in my personal philosophy, I think if someone's truly wise, they can put the most intricate things simply.
Yeah, valid.
And when he said that, I was like, that was extremely well put, simple, and I now feel like I have a better understanding.
It opens your eyes. Yeah.
And I try to do the same thing in my teaching. Like, even if it's this crazy out there concept, how simply and concise I can put it. You know, it's like my teachers taught me, it's like, you're teaching to a 5-year-old, but you're not trying to belittle the person at the same time and talk to them like a 5-year-old.
The idea of like Joe Rogan always talks about, he goes, I either call my mom or I tell my daughter the joke that I plan on putting in my next thing. And he goes, if it doesn't click with those two, then it's terrible.
Yeah, exactly.
I got to refine it more.
Yeah.
No, that's a good point. So how long were you over there, or what came about? Yeah.
The original question. All right. So after that, I think at this time when I met my girlfriend, she already decided to leave school and to go into this ashram, which is ashram. I believe the translation is roughly to work. Okay. So like in old school India and even like Eastern Asia, it was like if you wanted to learn something from either like a martial arts master, even like a blacksmith, like you had to go and show how bad you want it. Like there would have to be some sort of exchange of energy. Obviously you get fed, you'd have a place to sleep, and you'd learn their teachings, but there would just have to be an exchange, and whether that's sweeping the floor, cooking the food, whatever it is. So she went to the ashram, same scenario, where she's learning and she does like maybe 5 hours of service a day, and then she gets a free place to sleep. She gets a couple meals a day. So she already decided to do that with her best friend from high school, and I was like, wow, that's really freaking cool.
Yeah.
So
that's what I was just saying in my head.
Yeah. So I was like, man, I want to do that. So I didn't go until I went to visit her often, and I got to like hang out and have like great conversations with the monks there, young and old. That's the cool part. Is it's
and where was there?
Alachua, Gainesville area.
Okay.
So Gainesville, they have like what they call a bhakti house. It's more of like it's for like teens interested in this. And then in Alachua, there's like this gigantic eco village of like self-sustained places, giant like festivals for like Hindu holidays. And yeah, so they kind of bounce in between those two places. And there's like a ton. I think it's like the second largest spiritual eco village in America. So it's a huge place. Like
how far away is this?
Three.
Yeah, it's like 3 hours.
3 hours. So they had like, I think like 500,000 people came to one holiday on it was Krishna's birthday. He spoke yoga to the humans back in the day, and it was his birthday, and like it's a just gigantic celebration. So like 500. I think 500,000.
I'm like what?
Maybe like 5,000. I don't know. It was a little while ago.
Maybe like 50, which is what you would see at like almost like an NFL game.
Okay, so it was a little bit less than an NFL game, but it was close. Like it was packed.
500,000. I was baffled.
Yeah. I'm not the best iron numbers. But yeah, she was doing that, and I was like, well, she's learning all this stuff and improving all this work. Like I want to do that as well. While because she was in Gainesville, I was in Boca still, and I was really diving deep into yoga. I had a great teacher. I was just like, dude, just hit me with all the resources you've ever had. Cool. So I was like pulling through books, and at the same time I was like learning more about anatomy, about the poses, but I was also like probably more focused in like the philosophical internal practices. And then I decided to go to a different lineage ashram. Okay. Because in the one she went to, they don't really. It's not that like they say they don't say don't move or do a physical practice, but that's just not their emphasis. So they were solely bhakti in the terms of like the yoga pillars, and then the other one I went to was all four with a focus. Oh, I forgot to name the last one. I'll come back to that. Okay. But with a focus in Raja Yoga. So it was Hatha Yoga. So it was a lot of breath work. It was a lot of like poses. So then that's where I did my teacher training, and I lived there for a month. And you live like a month. You wake up at 5, you meditate, you do like devotional songs and prayers, and then you do your physical practice, and then you eat, and then you do service for a few hours, then you rest, and then you have a few lectures on philosophy. And then the last pillar is jnana yoga. So that's kind of more in the like you're studying the scriptures and you're kind of like having realizations about the scriptures. So the basic process of yoga leads you to this self-realized state about the actual reality and the nature of the world. So,
and where you fall in that.
Yeah, so you go through each of the 4, although naturally you're going to gravitate towards one the most through inclinations, like we were talking about people learning.
Yeah.
So the first one, karma yoga, is made to kind of purify the ego, right? Because doing service for others, I'm not sure if you like notice yourself when you're like doing something for your parents that you don't really want to do. You're like, I don't want to do this. I'm better than this, blah, 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 blah. So it's like the opportunity to like quiet that and just do the work for the betterment of just doing it. That purifies the ego. The next is bhakti, devotion, purifying the heart. And then Raja is like focusing the mind to be able to have these spiritual experiences, I guess. And then the last step is reading about them. So then you're like, I've gone through this process. I've had these experiences, and now I'm like reasserting them by studying.
You read it, and then it connects to what you just experienced, and that's how you automatically can tie it together faster.
Exactly. And have it like resonate deeper, because it's like you can read stuff and you're like, wow, this is crazy. I wonder if that's true. But it's like if you've already gone through that and then you read it from a 5,000-year-old book and you're like, holy crap. Like that's what happened to me. Like I was so I practice 2 different types of meditation. One is like I repeat a mantra.
Okay.
And the other is like introspective. I'm like kind of diving into my thought process and like what can I improve, things like that. Sometimes it's just observing, like noticing how I'm feeling.
Observing your thoughts.
Yeah. And then the mantra one is more I'm focusing like on my heart. I'm like picturing like the avatar of the divine that I resonate with, and I'm kind of connecting to that space. And I was doing it like a few hours a day at one point, and I was like, wow, this is like, I just have such an easier time focusing and getting into that kind of meditation state where you're just like,
flow state.
Yeah, when I'm chanting, then when I like sit quiet doing nothing. And then the next day I call Marissa, she's studying like these yogic texts.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh man, I read this cool thing about how like the mantra helps you focus faster. And I was like, no freaking way. I was like, that happened to me like yesterday. And then she also said, she was like, I can't remember what she said, but I was just like, there was a few times where it's like, because there's like blind faith and then there's kind of like calculated faith. Like blind faith is just like, I'm just going to do these practices and
see what comes about.
Not even that. I'm not even going to see, I'm just going to follow this like mindlessly. And then there's another one. It's like, okay, it says you should try this for 6 months, whatever. I'm going to try that and see how I feel. And then you do that, you feel this thing, and then you read about it and they say, that's how you're supposed to feel. And you're like, wow. Because if you read it before, it may influence the experience. So there's a few times specifically with that meditation and with breath work that I was like, I'm just going to try this for a few times and then like kind of observe how I feel. And then I later, after I like kind of calculate, like I feel X, Y, and Z, I read, you're supposed to feel X, Y, and Z. I was like, okay, this obviously has some sort of legitness to it. So I continued down the path,
And then that's really eye-opening to the fact that you're experiencing very similar things to what other people have been experiencing for thousands of years. And you're like, okay, so I really am just in this flesh bag, and like it is just a soul experiencing. So we are, what does your bumper sticker say? We are spiritual beings
having a material experience.
Yeah.
And it's exactly to like what you just pointed at. Like, I can't really practice anything and confirm that we're not the body and we're something else. But it's a reasonable leap for me because I've done these practices and then I experienced X and I read you're supposed to experience X. Okay, you're experiencing X because of you're not the body. Okay, that's not too much of a leap anymore because I've experienced half the things they're talking about, you know?
And even just the idea of like saying your name inside of your own head. Somebody, you didn't verbalize your name in your head, but when you say it inside of your head, you are saying it and you are hearing it. Well, who's you? Because if one person is saying it and another person is hearing it and nothing was verbalized physically, there was no sound waves, there has to be some sort of understanding that it's separate from the physical concept.
For sure. And the yogis talk about it as like there's different planes of existence, and also that was how the universe was created in this order of like plane existence. So it starts very subtle, some to a point where we can't observe it, and it starts to get more and more gross. So it starts to get more and more obvious, like tangible. And what I've noticed is that this pattern repeats throughout all of nature.
Everything.
Like, let's say, can you feel like the electrical current running through your nervous system? No, but you can feel your skin, right? And it's like, that's the innermost part that's developed. And then this is the outermost part. So this is the most tangible, like the muscle, right?
Yeah.
And then the least tangible, I'd say maybe the nerves, right? So it's like.
But even then, the nerves are something that when you die can be taken and it's a tangible thing.
Exactly.
But the electricity running through them, that's just energy, and that cannot be grasped.
And you don't see that, the nervous system, until you're dead. So it's like, this could very well be the same thing happens that like when we dead, then that energy that's charging it goes off somewhere else and charges something else. And it's like they say that's how the universe was created. And the Big Bang, I don't study astrophysics too much. I'm very interested in it because of the similarities that the yogis talk about. But it's like it's creating this faint layer of like very unharnessed energy, and then it slowly becomes more and more tangible, and then that creates that energy compresses and creates a planet, a star, so on and so forth.
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying. There's deeper levels to everything. Deeper and deeper and deeper. I think there's something smaller than the atom.
I think so too. And like we know dark energy and dark matter exists, but we can't really observe the particles, so that could.
And so we only experience from a body standpoint, like we only see certain colors that other animals on the planet.
We see a very small fraction of light and energy part. We actually see no energy particles except visible light, which is very small in the spectrum, you know?
Very small.
And then we can observe, or we can like measure it with machines, and like it's bigger, but it's still probably not as much.
And even then, it's limited by what we have experienced as humans in general. We can only hear certain things. Why do you think dog whistles, like dogs hear differently than we do?
And even like young people versus old people, like there's certain pitches that people can't pick up on.
So we're only experiencing this small, minute portion of it if we think that this is everything.
Yeah.
That this is us.
Exactly.
And speaking of astrophysics, that's why I pulled up my phone. Did you listen to the Joe Rogan with Neil deGrasse Tyson?
Yep.
Oh my God.
It's very fascinating.
Dude, I have to
All
listen to that again.
Great. It's really good.
He was saying some stuff and I was like, what?
Yeah.
Oh my God. And he sometimes he was able to like really break it down and simplify it. But other things, like you just can't simplify something that fast.
Yeah. No, it's true.
The concepts that he was talking about with different worlds and
so the crazy thing is that like 5,000 years ago, they had the same theory of the multiverse.
Yeah.
5,000 years ago.
Which is wild.
It's wild. And like my teachers,
What do they have 5,000 years ago? According to regular history, we don't think they had anything.
Which may or may not be true. You know,
the more I learn, the less I
there's
think it's true.
There's another one. Joe Rogan, Randall Carson, and Graham Hancock. They study that around the time of the last ice age, we know for a fact now, it's been proven that there was some sort of great impact in Greenland. They don't know what it was, but they know it was, and they know it's less certain, but they're pretty sure it caused a global cataclysm of floods, of fires, of eruptions.
Like a meteor impact?
Meteor or comet or something else, they don't know. That's what they're still working it out. Gotcha. It's a fairly new study, like in the last 5 years that they've discovered it.
Wow.
As like the ice sheets in the North Pole melt off, they've been able to uncover this, and it dates back to around 11 to 12,000 years ago. And a lot of these ancient monoliths they're discovering as well also date back to that time, roughly. Some a little bit before, some a little bit after. And as we dig deeper, right, we find older things. So a lot of times, like in America, they're just like, oh, we found, spearheads. Yeah. That must be the first people that were here were hunter and gatherers, right? And they just stopped digging. They lost their curiosity. And the guy on Joe Rogan, Graham Hancock, he talks about it. He's like, why did we lose our curiosity? Why don't we dig deeper and see what's there? So like there was a few things, and there was like mudslides that just happened to uncover things that were deeper, and they found more pottery, art that suggests civilization, right? Because you're not going to be making art if you're hunting and gathering. So once again, it's not super proven, but there's a possibility that there was a civilization before that. And then, on the other side of the argument, it's okay, if it was an advanced civilization, where's all their tools? Where's the spacecrafts, But it's like, if there was this global cataclysm at that time, all could be wiped away. All could be at the ocean that overtook a lot of the coastal lines, which most of cities resided. And we don't explore the ocean, so...
Dude, the fact that the ocean is so obnoxiously large and we know so little is crazy to me that people are more interested in it.
I know. I'm the same boat. I'm like, how are you? How does this sit right with you? Like, Indonesia used to be like a huge landmass like China. And now it's a chain of islands. And they're finding underwater statues of like Vishnu, like of Hindu deities that are like dated super old. So it's like, and they recently found like another monolith, but on land, but they can only see like 20 feet of it. And through like a ground penetrating radar, there's like 100 feet below it.
So it's almost like the idea of like, if in thousands of years, someone starts digging into the local waste management thing that we've decided to dump everything into a big pile and put grass on top, they're going to find crazy shit in there. It's the same concept. It's like, why doesn't that sound right to other people?
I don't know. I really don't know. There's a lot of dogma in science, unfortunately, of like, this is my thought process. I'm in, right? And I think that also stems from like believing you're the body and you're the mind. Because it's like, if you're taken out of like, okay, none of this knowledge is really mine. It's all just in circulation. It's what kind of like a yogic thought process. Then it's like, okay, if I discover something, I'm not attached to it is. And I think a lot in archaeology, once again, I'm not in the field. This is just what the guy shared on Joe Rogan.
Anthropology.
He was like, a lot of people are like, oh, civilization started in Mesopotamia. And this is like our idea. And we're going to hold on to it. And anything that goes against that, we're like, why not be like, oh, that's interesting. Let's research it together. You know what I mean? If it disproves my theory, so what? We get a better understanding of our species.
There was a Russian guy on here as well who talks all about the UFOs and everything like that, and he's a Harvard professor, and he talks about just like the intellectual community and the educational community, and very few of them are people who have actually experienced things in the world. A lot of them are just reading research and then spewing it back out. And because of that, they want to hold on to their thought processes, and they get a certain title or they get a certain reward for finding something.
And they'll feel like they'll lose that power that's attained.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I'm the right one. And that separates and that creates competition within the fields. And that's...
Which it really, I think, you know, it seems like yoga was like this. And my teacher, Sean, shared this perspective with me that changed it. Even though I was like very into science and very into yoga, I viewed them as separate because everyone else did. And I was trying to play to both sides. And he's like, we shouldn't view them as separate. Yoga is one of the first sciences, if the first science.
Valid.
Right? It's the science of introspection and how like you relate to the universe. And as like modern day science is evolving, we're finding out a lot of what they said is correct.
Yeah.
You know, like
you're made of carbon, nitrogen, oxygen.
Yep.
And all of a sudden you have energy running through you, and there is constant recreation.
And they had a great connection with like astrology and the stars. And also like in terms of like UFOs, they have like UFOs in the scriptures. They call them Vimanas. And I'm not sure if you've heard the Bob Lazar.
I have heard the Bob Lazar
about how they fly.
Yeah.
They describe them the same way 5,000 years ago.
That's crazy. So wild. And going back to the ocean, dude, there's so much down there.
Yeah.
There's so much that there. Who was he talking about that is saying he thinks aliens are living in the ocean?
Yeah. I mean, why wouldn't you? Right?
Yeah.
If you want to go be unseen, it's a great place to go. And David Fravor, like for those who don't know, David Fravor was a Air Force pilot, and they have like a very famous like UFO encounter that like many major magazines, news articles reported on. And they actually saw it come from underneath the water, and then they got into a short chase with it, but it was just, it outmaneuvered them. You know, it could fly in ways that wasn't propelled like our mechanisms were. It appeared to have its own field of gravity, therefore it could go in any direction at any speed. It didn't have to slow down. It could just stop on a dime.
Acceleration. Yeah, it was extreme. My thought process when it comes to the oceans and the world in and of itself, you talked about the levels of it and like the simplicity of what makes up everything as we know right now as an atom. Different atoms make up different compounds in chemistry. Different chemical compounds make up things like water when you add them together. And these physical things that we are tangible. So then you take basic atoms and you take something living like water or something living like algae, right? Or mushrooms, fungi. And it's said that once the algae started to be the most single-celled organism on the planet, or the only single-celled organism on the planet, then we started to have an atmosphere, and the atmosphere created winds, and the winds created debris on land, and that's what created fungi, and fungi led to the growth of trees and things of that nature. So my thought process goes to, what if as species evolve, they just become more simple instead of more complex? So what if algae at one point was a different species, but it learned and evolved into, well, the easiest way to be here for the longest time is to photosynthesize and to be as minute and simplistic as possible.
Well, do you think we're more simple or complex than the algae?
I would say we are more complex because there is a number of cells and organisms and organs working together, right? But as we evolve, I think we're going to become more simple.
I hope so.
Right?
Yeah.
And the idea is that we are the newest of species really on the planet, right?
Yeah.
If you look at all the species that have been here for longer, they are more simple than us.
Yeah. True, they kind of found what works and stuck to it.
Yeah, for evolutionary standpoint.
Yeah.
So were they always that simple, or did they start out more complex and they've learned to downgrade themselves into more simple compounds? And
Well, I think like complexity brings complications.
Yeah.
You know? So it's like, in
So-
terms of like survival of the fittest and evolution, like, obviously the more simple you are, the less variables you have, the better chance for survival.
Mhm.
You know? Like, obviously we're not doing that good because we fight each other and like we make things unnecessarily complex, and that leads to like a lot of struggle with the human species. And I definitely agree, if we were just simple, and same thing of like in terms of like it all comes back to the mindset, at least in my, like, we have a complex mindset. Like, I'm you, or I'm me, you're you. Someone else is someone else. Someone else is from a different country. They're somehow separate from me, from an imaginary border drawn in the line.
Yeah.
That's a very complex way of thinking. Like, we're all just the human species, and then beyond that, we're all just energy floating in and out of different vessels at different periods of time.
Valid.
And it's like, I think that way of thinking is very simple, and it breeds more longevity, because it's like, I'm not going to fight you and we're not going to kill each other because we're just really the same thing. So there's no reason to do that, you know? But since we're the same thing, we can work together and
become more powerful.
Exactly. Yeah. And help each other move forward. So I definitely hope in the future we lean towards a more simple way of thinking, and like taking that kind of, I wouldn't say old school, but like that classical Eastern philosophy, but then moving it forward into an advanced civilization. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we're not just like sitting around the campfire like hunting, but like we have those same kind of values of like, we're in this together, but we're moving forward technologically.
Technologically we advance, but
we still find a place for those traditional values.
Different perspective and value.
Yeah. Because we see, like, I think the path we're going down in terms of like values and like, it's not a productive one.
No. I see a separation.
Yeah.
There's a divergence of paths for half the species and the other half.
Yeah.
In one way. Like Joe Rogan talks about the whole like putting a chip in your head and being AI, one with it and things like that.
Yeah.
And then there's the other side of like people are becoming monks and just learning to be so simple in their approach to day-to-day life.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so much understanding of health because of science improvements. So many people are dictating this way, and so many others are dictating that way in terms of like, I want to use technological things to maintain health, and other things are saying, I'm going to maintain health and longevity and simplicity through my own introspective practices and movement and food and breathing and meditation, that kind of stuff.
Why not do both?
Yeah.
Right?
I'm just saying like, now I see a divergence.
Like, I wouldn't be able to meditate. I had a broken nose my whole life and I didn't know. So I had like issues breathing, asthma, and I had surgery like my freshman year of college, and breathing through my nose was a lot easier. And that was just around the time I got into breath work too. So it was like a whole new world opened up for me. I would have never been able to access that without technology.
Valid. True.
So it's like
we wouldn't even
like nothing in this world is inherently good or bad. It's all about your relationship with it.
Yeah. The Chinese proverb about the farmer that if you don't know where I'm going yet, you don't know it. All right. So there's a Chinese proverb about a farmer in a village, and this farmer had a son that was 18 years old. Okay. So the 18-year-old son had left the gate open and a horse escaped or something. And they couldn't find the horse for a couple of days. And long story short, a bunch of people kept coming up to him like, oh, that's so bad that you lost your horse. I'm so sorry, blah, blah, blah. And he would say nothing is good or bad. Or he would say some sort of like catchy phrase that related to the fact that who is to say what is good or bad.
Yeah.
And he sent his son to go get the horse. The horse was then brought back by his son, and everyone's like, oh, it's so good, blah, 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 blah. The next day, his son falls off the horse, breaks his leg. Everyone's like, oh my God, that's so bad, blah, blah, blah. The day after that, the Chinese government comes to take anyone 18 years or older for the draft. And he's like, well, my son can't go. He's injured. And everyone comes over. Oh my God, it's so lucky.
So in that case, broken leg is good,
a great
right?
thing, right? Yeah. So that concept, I remember hearing that years ago, dude. And I was like, all is relative. Everything.
I completely agree. And it's like, I think that way for my concussions, like I thought it as a bad thing, but it was really my perspective on it, because it's like I got a lifetime opportunity that most 15-year-olds don't get. Like I was absorbed in like high school sports, probably wasn't going to play in college, you know, and then I would have gone to college and had this like emptiness of like, what am I going to do? What's my purpose? This and that. And it's like I had to face that reality when I was 15. So it's like, you know, I grew up a lot, and I had a lot of time to think of like I wanted to be a writer at first, you know, and then I was like, I really found value in exercise and movement for my health. So it's like, I want to stay doing this. The best way to do that is to teach, because then I'm not going to teach and not practice. So it was kind of like a back engineer thing of like, I'm doing this for myself and I need something to hold me accountable. And if I teach, that's going to hold me accountable. And then I ended up like really liking it. And I like started falling in love with like the service of it. But it was like, initially it was like a very selfish reason of like, I just want to stay moving throughout my life. I don't want to sit at a desk. So if I do this, I achieve that. And it's like something bad, like same thing. So many people are like, oh my God, that's terrible. You can't play lacrosse. I feel so like they were crying. I was fine. You know what I mean? They like would come up to me crying
for me.
Yeah. And I'm like, you know, it's really not like it opened up a whole new avenue. And I think like you never really know what, like if it's a traumatic event, like that could, people don't like to like karma is like a very like sensitive topic, especially if you've had trauma, right? Because it's like, and I think it also has to do with like, you know, like not anything against Christianity or Catholicism, because I think there's some extremely valuable gems of wisdom in there, but there's been a lot of like hate spewed out of it, a lot of like, you know, don't say God's name in vain. Yeah. We think like that, or saying like, God damn, but it was actually like, don't use God's name to commit a sin, you know? So it's like, think about all the wars done in God's name, like, you know? So I think a lot of like people like, oh, you know, I did like, how do you think like I deserved this terrible thing that happened to me? Like almost like as a punishment, but that's not really how karma's viewed. It's more like, this terrible thing happened to you so that you can move on to something better.
Yes.
So that you can, they think of like karma as like, you're going from life to life, right? And I think of it like what are those? Like, it's like the train, like a coal-fired train.
Okay.
Like, so it's like your karma's the coal, right? And then when you run out of coal, you're no longer in the cycle of birth and death, and you've arrived at your stop. Whatever you believe that to be, heaven, a space in between, you know. So the karma is coal. Every time something bad happens to you, right? Your karma is thrown in the fire. So it's like you accumulate karma doing bad things, right?
But
that's also relative.
Forward.
But then if bad things happen to you, right, that karma is now used. So like the yogis talk about, you're trying to live a life that's karma free, so that you can use all that karma. So then like a lot of people, you know, when they start like meditating, they start like going down that path, a lot of shitty stuff happens to them, you know, and that often like says, oh, I'm going to stop doing this, so on. But I take that as a good sign, you know, this is now another learning opportunity. This is now, okay, what is this supposed to show me?
It's a challenge.
Yeah, it is. And, you know, nothing good is easy. You know, it's like, if you want to improve your back squat 100 pounds, like, you're going to have to squat a lot and it's going to suck a lot. You know, you're going to have to do it days where your body doesn't want to do it. You're going to have to, like, push through it. It's like the same thing with this introspective work. It's like, it's going to suck. Things are going to come up that you didn't even know were an issue. But that's all coal in the fire. And then once all the coal's in the fire is going to die out. The train's going to come to a stop, and you're going to be in whatever that land is that you view is where you're going towards. You know, different philosophies place different emphasis, but it's all the same place. You know,
take it as a sign of being alive that you have coal, right?
Yeah,
you have something,
because you can't go through this life without something terrible happen to you. No. And I think that also is like how we're all connected as humans. You know, it's like we all share pain. That's just a reality of this life. You know what I mean?
It's an experience that brings perspective, and that's like every experience. When I was doing my yoga practice today, like I haven't smoked in a while, and so when I was there, I was like, just let it happen. Let the experience take place. Yeah. Don't fight it. Try not to have any sort of mindset going into it, like, oh, I want it to be like this, or I want it to be like that. Yeah. I always say expectations lead to disappointment.
100% agree.
So the idea of just like understanding if you are experiencing something, that's a sign of life. That's a sign of being a human. Just like we only have a small spectrum of things we can hear, things we can see, things we can smell. We have a small spectrum of things we can feel.
But in that, there's a lot of information.
A ton of information. But you also have to realize that you have the ability to feel more than you have the ability to express verbally. There are other languages that have multiple, like 18 words for the word love.
Yeah.
We use the same word.
Yeah, when you think about it, you compare it to other, especially ancient languages, like English is a very like crude language. That's why it's actually one of the hardest to learn for other people. It doesn't really make a ton of sense.
No.
You know?
That's a valid point.
Like, okay, you know, so like cars, plural, one car, all right. Cars, oh, you're going to add an S to it. Okay, goose, you're going to add an S to goose? No, you know, like, no. It's like, and like you said, like in more ancient languages, like a word was almost conveyed as an experience or feeling. Like there would be one word for not just like a mic, but it'd be a word for like this exchanging of conversation and it being recorded, almost like a podcast is, you know?
Or even saying, I am mad. That's a 4-word English sentence that connects you to your body and your mind, as opposed to saying, I am experiencing anger or frustration. I am experiencing madness, right? That's 2 totally different ways to say something. And because of that, it dictates how you actually feel subconsciously.
It's that internal narrative of like what you say about your experiences. So it's like if I'm angry, right, and I say that to myself, now I'm connecting my identity with that temporary emotion.
Your body, mind, and soul are all feeling that at a point because you said that, as opposed to that just being a mind issue and your body and soul being separate.
Well, even if you're feeling that with your soul, body, and mind, right? Which you probably are. It's temporary.
Yeah.
But then you connect your identity with that temporary
forever,
and then you try to draw it out. You know what I mean? I think like for movement, like young toddlers and children are like the peak of inspiration. And for mindfulness practices, it's like when a kid's mad, he cries. 2 seconds, he's over it. He's back to playing. You know how bad I would kill for that skill?
Yeah. Yeah. Valid,
like,
bro.
especially like the culture of men, like we're taught to like hold things in, get through it. And it's like, that is so much less useful than just crying for 2 seconds and then like having it go through your body. Cause like
energy release.
Yeah, that's what the emotions are supposed to do. They're supposed to run their course and release, but we want to not feel that. We want to be doing something else. We want to be not present. So we hold this, we store it. It manifests as a muscle tightness, a chronic injury, so on and so forth. And it's like we could, and like to the task of like chronic injuries, it's like, okay, I do this, my shoulder gets hurt. I shouldn't not do that. There's something that's telling me. Same thing. It's like if I go out into a social situation or I smoke and I get very anxious, okay, there's something I gotta learn here. Same thing. It's like if I do this, my shoulder kills. Am I going to live my life never doing this? Same thing. If I get anxiety going out, am I never going to go out? It's a pretty shitty way to live, you know? I'm sure you could do it. And I'm
just going to sit here.
I've been guilty of it too. Like, no, it's just too much, you know? But it's like, that's the reason I smoke too, is because like, I tell people like, I get anxiety when I smoke. Why do you smoke? Like, because I get anxiety. It's a good practice.
Joe Rogan says that.
Yeah, it's a good practice. It's like, if I can learn to come back to my breath and calm myself when I'm taking something that's
deliberately making the opposite happen.
Then when I'm sober and I'm in a situation that makes me anxious, now I like to think more equipped to come back to that state of calmness.
Or even if it's not just a sober situation that makes you anxious, but a sober situation that makes you angry, or a sober situation that makes
any emotion,
feel some sort of way, then you can be better apt to quickly and efficiently get back to status quo.
Yeah. And the Buddhists talk about it as the state of equanimity. So it's like you're always fluctuating. And this is like same thing of like it was an experience I think, and then I read about it in a Buddhist text. And it was like equanimity is like you can picture it like, actually this is a perfect example for it. So it's like this right here would be equanimity, right? And then the highs would be happiness, lows would be depression. So you go through life and you experience a high, and you notice right after a high is a low. So like I took that, like I saw that very clearly, like partying. It's like the night, so much fun. I'm having a great time. The morning, and even for many days, I feel terrible. I feel empty. My body feels like crap. You know what I mean? So I was like, why am I going so far up just to feel down when if I just lock in at that equanimity state, that equilibrium, I feel really good. And it's not like a good, like, I'm ecstatic, I'm partying, I'm having fun, but it's like a internal contentness. Like, this is what I should be doing. Like that sense when you're out in nature and you just take a deep breath in, you're like,
nothing can bother me.
Yeah, it's like that contentness, that equanimity. And I think like, same thing like in situations, like if you can always just come, no matter what you're feeling great, come back to that equanimity, because everything, you know, it's temporary, right? The life's ongoing, goes up, goes down, sometimes less, sometimes it's more. You always come back to that state of equanimity.
I just had a quick realization. So I've always said that the heartbeat is literally an EKG. It's reading how our heart is pulsating. As a animal, as a human, ours is different than other animals, right? That is literally just like when you hear a radio sound wave, right? It has a different tone than when you see a light, right?
Yeah.
So everything is some sort of energy wave. This is our actual energy wave. This is our aura. This is what is always being spewed out into the world. And this is a perfect understanding and diagram of how we experience life, our ability to experience life, the different things we can experience.
And it's perfectly signified by the actual heart data,
Exactly.
right? Like you're high, like you're stressed out, you're in an anxious state, right? Your heart rate's gonna go.
Yeah.
You're chill. It's gonna be more baseline.
And I think the idea is to be able to make the transition. We want to be able to experience the highest and the lowest,
and not be attached to it, not stay there.
Yes. And also be able to transition in and out of them at a steadier pace.
Yes.
So not necessarily be able to go so high and then shoom, crash, but to be able to go so high and then, okay, I get it. I have to experience something more negative now to humble me, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna stay maintained in a thought process that
you understand it's temporary. So it's like a lot of times it's like like chronic sadness. At least for me, this is what I've noticed. Not sure if it's the same for everyone, but like there'll be an event that saddens me, right? I feel sad, and then the sadness starts to go away, but I'm still attached to the idea of feeling sadness because the event sucked, whatever happened. Mm-hmm. So now,
or you continue to think of the event.
Exactly.
The thought of the event is attached to the emotion.
Exactly, but the emotion isn't always there. Yeah. But now my mind's kind of locked in on the event. Whereas, like when we talk about that state of like the babies are in, they're just allowing themselves to feel the sadness to the fullest degree, where sometimes we're like, I don't know, like maybe halfway I'll feel it, you know, don't really want to deal with it that much. And then it will come back later, you know. They allow themselves to feel it. And then they also allow themselves not to feel it, which I think is the even, it's I think almost the harder key. Like it's one thing to allow yourself to feel some things, but it's another really hard task to allow yourself to let it go when it's time.
That's a really good point. It also just popped in my head that I got to connect you with this kid Thomas, who I was on his podcast, and you guys would connect super well. He ended up coming to take a class at GNO.
Oh, nice.
With his girlfriend and one of their other friends.
Was he the track? Was he a runner?
No.
Do you guys talk about like breath stuff?
Maybe.
Okay.
I don't know.
I feel like I
might have talked.
I saw a clip or something.
Okay. Oh. I don't know.
It doesn't matter. Yeah, I'll connect with him.
But anyway, I was just on his podcast, and when you were talking about like the masculine side of like having to basically like just like I'm not feeling anything, suppress everything, don't deal with it right now, and as a matter of fact, don't deal with it at all. Just go put it into something else, right? Like take your anger out on the court or on the field or in the weight room, right?
Yeah.
Such a weird way to live.
Really is.
But it's drilled into our heads.
And it's like you see no women do that. Like you've never seen like you know, countless times you've seen a guy in the gym who's like, I just need to let off some steam. You know, that phrase is used so much on women, and I've never heard a woman say like, I need to let off some steam and like go punch a bag or like go to the gym. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I have, and there's value in that.
Definitely.
There's definitely value.
Because sometimes you guys, you're if you need to confront someone about something that makes you angry, sometimes you're too. I think like you should handle things when you're at that equanimity state. You know,
which goes back to the fact that like there is no good and there is no bad. Mm-hmm. Those are just words and relative to everything going on, every situation. It's just an experience, and it's temporary, and it's just energy flowing and bouncing off of fucking particles that we can't see.
And in terms of like the good and bad energy, the yogis kind of just separate time into ages, and the ages are classified by like our relationship with evil spirits. So in the beginning, no evil spirits. Throughout the ages, it would be like, okay, now there's evil spirits, but they're in separate bodies. So it's like that's why you have tales about like gods battling demons, you know? as time goes on, those good and evil spirits are now in the same body.
Ooh.
And that's the time we're in now.
Where we have a good guy on one shoulder and bad guy on the other.
Yeah.
Our ego and our soul battling for spot.
Well, certain different trains of yoga, and I don't know my personal perspective on this, but I think you'd find it interesting. It's like our soul actually has an ego, right? Because it carries things from life to life. And we have a true ego and a false ego.
Okay.
Our true ego would be like our soul's ego. Our false ego would be like Finn's ego, right? Because like I could have an ego, but I'm not necessarily Finn.
Yeah.
I'm just Finn for, the next 70 years maybe, Yeah. So it's like, but then after that, I hope I won't take Finn's ego with me, but I'll still have a little bit, and then that will be like some of Finn's ego may turn into my ego.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you'll absorb what was necessary, and take that into your next life, more wisdom.
And it could be some stuff that's
like that's why we have old souls, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's accumulative knowledge, and you see it a lot. It's like prodigies at 5 that don't know music, or or that remember their old family. So it's like there's multiple cases, kind of loose anecdotal evidence, but still fascinating stuff. And it's like, and another thing is like, when I was very young, I thought being a monk was one of the coolest things you could possibly grow up to be. It was at first like a kung fu monk, but like the idea to me of like having a simple life was so appealing, because it was like my mind made everything more complex than it was. So it's like to just meditate and do martial arts, it's the best. And then same thing too, is like the struggle of like knowing what you want to do can cripple some people, because there's so many options in this world. And then to just devote your life to one cause is, I think, very, like, we need it as humans. Like we're not out there getting our own food anymore, right? So that kind of main thing of our own survival isn't there anymore. And now it's like, what the heck do we do? I think that's a huge reason why depression exists, because so many things are done for us, we don't really know what to do.
Yeah. What value are we bringing to the species? Exactly.
And it's like the monks, like, they're just locked in to their purpose of like, if for the Shaolin monks, it was like protecting the emperor, and like they use meditation to help hone their skills, and like the yogis, it's like connecting to the God within, so they're like, everything they do, it works towards that goal. And I think like, even if yours isn't that extreme as like connected with God, you can still do that. Like everything I'm working towards is to serve better. And it's like, it's also to serve God, but also to serve all the individual species that God created. So it's like, I'm always looking at okay, how can I splice this better to make people understand it better? How can I say things that brings them onto a more introspective level, certain things like that. And so, tangent onto another one. I always found like monk life was so appealing, and I put that in the back burner because that was like when I was 5, and then like when like I thought about
to save this for later,
right? And when I like started contemplating like renouncing more and more, like giving up my things and like being a monk, I read that like, if you were a monk in your last life, that's one of your earliest desires as a child. And I was like, holy fuck, I was like, and then like it, and like I hadn't thought about like wanting to be a monk when I was a child. Exactly. I like didn't think about being a monk since I was a child. And then like, as I was like contemplating doing it again, I read that and I was like, holy crap. And it's like, they also say like, in terms of,
so is I an NBA player?
Possibly, right? And that's another thing that's really interesting about the soul is like, it's beyond time and space. Mm-hmm. So you could have been an alien in the future in your last life. Right? In your next life, you could be a pirate in like the 13th century, because that energy is beyond time and space. So it's not like we can only perceive time as linear, as like, You're moving from point A to point B.
Because of the fact that what we are experiencing from a flesh standpoint.
Exactly.
Is
it's birth to decay.
Yeah.
So it's like that's the way we kind of rationalize it to make this experience make sense. But in actuality, it's not like that. You know, it's like there's no good physical analogy to describe it because most things physical are linear, and
we're trying to express it using a language that was created just a couple hundred years ago.
Exactly. So there's no good way of putting it, but it's like the soul's beyond all that. It can travel in any direction, and then there's also the argument that you're existing in that other life at the same time. So you have, and that's also like another meditation practice is like tapping into that accumulative universal knowledge, because that's always there, right? And it's like I've had a few meditations where I've peeked into a past life now and then, and it's like I think in like this is once again like very loose, very out there, but like I think one things that the yogis say as well is like how you end your life is how you start your next one. So it's like if you live a life focusing on God, at the end of your life, you'll think of God, you'll go to God, right? If you spend all your life thinking of money, you know, next life, you may be born into a rich family, something like that, you know? So like for me, I think I lost like a significant other because like the first young idea struggle was like relationships and like how am I gonna like connect and like find the love of my life, because it's like I think I lost it in the last one, and like I had a very small glimpse in a deep meditation at the ashram of that. Like it was just like a weird like car crash scene and like the feeling in your heart of like losing a loved one, and it was like a very bizarre weird experience. I've hallucinated a few times in seated practice, and they've all been very bizarre, weird experiences. It's like you're sitting still in a dark room and you're getting just incorrect sensory information, and it's like. Have you floated? I haven't. I'm dying to. I want to so bad.
Dude, we should just go.
I'm sorry.
We should go to the one in Deerfield.
Yeah, because it's like close to here, right? Yeah.
It's literally in between here and Gino.
It sounds like such an amazing experience. I like to do it a lot in my pool. Like I'll just like sit on one of the steps, or even like go into like a very rested half squat with my back on the wall, and just kind of like meditate into that. And it's a very nice experience.
But the floating with
it's next
sensory
level.
information, it's crazy.
No, and you'll be like PTSD. I think it's just called PTS now because it's
they're trying. Okay.
Well, my one of my yoga teachers studies and does like trauma yoga for veterans. Okay. And have you ever read the book The Issues Are in the Tissues?
No.
Or Your Body Keeps the Score?
No.
So basically, like originally we thought PTSD was all in your mind. It was a psychological disorder, and that triggers physiological response. But it's actually the reverse, and that's why people black out. So they'll hear like a drop that sounds like a sharp gunshot, and their body immediately goes into fight or flight, like it
turns the brain off.
Yeah, so it will turn the brain off because it doesn't fucking know what's going on, and then the body will take over, and that's why like some like veterans will like jump on you if you like scare them. You know, they'll like put you in a chokehold right away, and then they'll like wake up and they'll be like, oh my god, I'm sorry. You know, their brain comes back to it. So it's like the body keeps the score. So like in meditation, there's a few times where like I was flooded with like a memory of like a difficult time, and I was feeling those sensations on my body, and like I opened my eyes and nobody's touching me, but yet I'm getting this information from my body like I was doing it, like you were poking, pinching me. It was no different. I wouldn't be able to tell the difference if on this arm you were pinching me and on this arm nobody was.
And it's just to like think about all the things that happen to you on a day-to-day basis with that concept makes you so much more what you talked about, just understanding of that equilibrium sense. And then also the understanding of why the hell would I spend time being mad at you for wearing an orange shirt or having different colored skin, or the simple fact that you like money right now because in your next life, your past life, you had absolutely none.
Yeah,
and you were
exactly.
in a third world, terrible life and all this.
That's a great point.
Wow. That's crazy.
Right?
Just, the more you talk about it, the more it's just diving deep into my brain. And then you're talking about your hallucinations and
yes,
things.
That's what I wanted to.
And I'm like, damn, I've had some crazy ones too. And now they're popping in my head.
Right?
And I'm like, wait, was that a dream or was that a meditation or did that happen?
Yeah. So like
you don't know the difference.
So like you were saying, like you're flooded with like what you do throughout the day, and that's why. So I did this Buddhist practice called Vipassana. You can do it on your own. I struggle with it a lot on my own because of the essence of the practice. It's meant to done in silence, not talking, not making eye contact. And I understood it because the first 3 days, what flowed through my mind was everything I said, did, and heard the last week. So it's like you're trying to focus, you're meditating 10 hours a day, and it's just like, oh, it's every song I listened to on the 8-hour drive up into the forest, it's like every conversation I had in the 10 minutes before it started and we couldn't talk. So it's like, and especially like in my own seated practice at night, I noticed like the first couple minutes are that. It's like you're just flooded with the information you took in, you know what I mean? And then like it literally took 3 days of 10 hours of meditation just to get past that. And then after that, I could, and that's kind of the nature of the practice. It's like, okay, you're trying to go into your deep subconscious. They call them, can't remember the Sanskrit word, but it's like your deep subconscious conditioning. Okay. So first, right, in terms of like the nature of like gross to subtle, you have to get through all that gross stuff, all the information you took in, and then you can start to go into the subtle stuff you're storing. So it's like, that was, after I went through that, after a few days, I kind of got most of the subtle or gross stuff out. Then I started feeling like things in my body. You have to focus on those, let them release. Then underneath those, there's usually like a trigger. And something that I noticed that was very interesting was I had a knot on my back, right on my rhomboid, so between the shoulder blade and the spine. For years. It only got really bad probably a year before my meditation retreat. Okay. Sitting was always very tough with it. It was just very uncomfortable. There was a point where I couldn't even move and I couldn't get off the couch. And on the couch hurt and moving hurt. And I noticed that I was constantly tensing this area, like activating those muscles. And I let it release. I let my traps release, and I was just focusing on it. And by focusing on this area, certain thoughts started to flood. And it was like I was trying to become celibate at the time, and I've had a very sexually charged youth, so it just went against everything, kind of an inclination. I was really, really like fighting my own like self to be something I'm not, kind of. To be celibate because you identified as not. I wanted to be a monk, you know what I mean? But it was like in my nature, like I really love like connecting with people, and like, so it was like, it was really hard to do. And once I kind of released it, that like rigid idea of like, I need to be celibate to like reach this status quo of people taking me seriously, whatever. And like all these memories started to flood about like past sexual experiences. And like, that's when I started feeling like bites on my neck, kisses down here, like I was like having sex with like, you were fully experiencing. Yeah, but like I was in a dark room seated cross-legged, but all the experience I was getting was like sensory information from past sexual experiences. And then so like this thing I was storing was like past, like this physical manifestation was past experiences I was holding on to. Once I released the physical, or I should say in the process of releasing my physical tension, my mental tension of needing to do things a certain way also released.
Interesting.
So there's this like interconnectivity of like
dichotomy
of like, if there's a tense body, there's probably going to be a tense mind. If there's a tense
mind, there's a tense
Mhm.
body.
So it's kind of like,
You got
for
to
me,
see the chiropractor.
yeah. Once I like
You gotta
release,
see Dr. Oleg.
once I release the like, if I'm trying to release kind of trauma or past experiences that I'm holding on to, there's more like there's something I have to release in my body. And I think it's also the same thing.
Vice versa.
Like, I know I've been having a lot of hip flexor trouble and like glutes, and you know, my hip flexors and hips are extremely flexible.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they're very tight and inflamed. And like, my dad recently passed away, so it's like I think I'm holding a lot of that emotional trauma in that area.
Valid.
So it's like
100%.
in the process of like it's something I sit with most nights, is like just kind of like the acceptance and like doing that. And as I'm sitting and I'm like, now it's like the reverse process. Before I was focusing on the sensation, and then the mind would trigger something. Now I'm focusing on what I'm feeling through my mind and my heart, and the body starts to release the hip flexors.
That's powerful. What's even crazier is if and when you see Dr. Oleg, he will work on my left side. Have you been thinking about this, that, and the next one?
Now, sorry to interrupt. Does he have like his own office, or does he do it out of Grabbing Oxygen?
Right now he's working at a GNO. He moved here from New York in quarantine. So he had his own practice up there.
Gotcha.
But he moved down here, and just by way of making connections and trying to find a house and retail space for a practice and all that. He has a busy schedule with what he's doing at our place right now. So,
is it like a nice setting? You know what I mean? Because he's doing like intimate work, and it's like,
so he doesn't
like during classes.
No, he doesn't come during class.
Okay,
hours,
so when he comes when it's more chill.
Between like 11 and 5.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
That was the only thing I was
like
worried about.
Personal training going on.
Okay, cool.
But we have the outdoors and the whole.
Yeah.
But he's also like such like he's so cool. He's such a social dude, and he'll work on like my collarbone. He's like, oh, you've been doing like a lot of envisioning. Like your right side's kind of tight. Your kidney's a little, out of place. He's like, you've been doing like a lot of envisioning for the future, right? Like, I might have been looking at certain things last night that were literally pertaining to my future. And he's like, great. So the idea and the concepts that you're talking about are so real, and there's so many people out there practicing those concepts, and there's so much science behind it, but once again, I just don't think that we're given the tools as young kids in our current educational system to understand those things.
Nope.
Because if you don't use it, you lose it. And if you were 5 years old and someone had in classes taught you the understanding of meditation and of movement and rolling and all these different things, for one, you probably would have been a superstar, gold star every day. Would have gotten
straight A's more than just one semester,
2, you would have been more driven to want to learn other things that
that pertain to your interests, because now you're more self-aware of what you like, what you don't like, and it's like, that's why like I left the university, because it was like I'm just getting things shoved down my mouth that I somewhat find interesting, don't really like, but like I got pushed to do things that I didn't like, just didn't work out. And I think like in terms of like kind of preserving ancient traditions, I think like mentorship is so freaking important. And it's like we lose that so much in the educational system. I'm not sure if like I don't think it's shunned. It's just, it's not a focal point. And it's like, especially it's like if one teacher is doing it to 50 kids, I think it's important to like find your own mentorship. And like, that's how I've learned almost everything I learned. Like I said, like I got my associate's degree, and like I had one of the best yoga teachers in Florida, be a good friend of mine. And I was just like, dude, give me all the resources you have. And I read it, we discuss it. He'd help me in class. I'd practice on him. I practice my teaching on him. He'd give me feedback. It's like this intimate relationship we used to have with our elders in the village, and like to pass down this generational wisdom that's just missed in the classroom. Classroom's just so focused on information intelligence. There's no emotional intelligence. There's no physical intelligence. There's no spiritual intelligence. All that's like, missed out.
You take health, or you take gym class. It's like,
and they're not and as I'm working with more kids, I understand the point of view. It's like you're just trying to keep them occupied because their attention span is so small. So I get that, but at the same time, it's like if you can do that and at the same time instill just one little bit of physical intelligence, like think about moving your body this way. You know what I mean? It's like you don't even have to give them a task that will open up a bunch of tasks they want to explore on their own.
Yes. Yeah, valid. It'll create curiosity.
Exactly, which then they can pursue on their own because it's
and when they ask why, you can't get mad.
Exactly.
Like, but what? But then why? but then how come this? But why that? And then that's when parents are like, freaking iPad, shut up.
Yeah, exactly. It's like we should be encouraging like these type of questions, but there's just like it's so hard, and I'm sure especially in this industry, it's like sometimes it's hard to make a living. So you take on more than you can do, and then the quality of everything diminishes.
That you do and for every single person.
I've been extremely fortunate enough to kind of set that as a boundary because I did that with yoga, and I was like in a very I just didn't like what I was doing and like how I was doing it.
You're one to the next.
I was teaching 12 classes a week, barely had time for my own practice, barely had time to like sleep, to do anything, and
it just isn't always better.
Yeah, exactly. I think most of the time it's like it's like worse. So it's like now I'm teaching like, and even like these 2 weeks when I was teaching all the classes of Republic Movement, it was a little bit overwhelming, but I still had time for a 2-hour practice every day, which made the world of a difference. If I didn't have time to do that, I would have just been like, hey, I can't do this. You know what I mean? Like it's always me first. And then that I've also noticed, like, if I have 6 a.m. shifts, I meditate and I move before every shift, even if that means I have to wake up an hour early, which I do. And it sucks most of the time, but I notice a drastic difference in the quality of my teachings when my body feels good, my mind's focused. It's like now I'm in a state of consciousness where I'm now able to share things at I'm better
higher frequency.
Yeah, I can transmit things at a better,
just in better ways and more efficiently.
More efficient, and with better efficiency,
Because if someone's not understanding one thing, you have unlimited toolbox to do so, but
and I want to be ready to use that toolbox. If I don't take the time to warm up in the morning, and people really need to see things, and it's like I can't do it because I'm stiff, in the morning. It's like I don't want that to be a scenario. You know what I mean? I want to be ready to demo anything at any time, or at least like have a student nearby. Because like I've been doing with my hips and my low back a little bit lately, and sometimes like
this is really good for it.
Yeah. I'll have a student. It actually doesn't feel too bad. These chairs are like, not the worst. So, like you can then have a student call on that's like, okay, here's this. And sometimes that's nice too, because it's like, now you're freed up from doing stuff. You can have them pause and you can like direct stuff, like pay attention to the hand placement. You see it's this way, not that way. Pay attention to how the leg sweeps the floor, how the hips are driving up,
all the things you were telling me today.
Yeah, exactly. So sometimes that can be helpful.
Yeah, no, for sure. I totally resonate with the idea of
mentorship.
Mentorship and then not taking on more than you can handle efficiently.
Because you're serving no one that way,
But not only that, you are also diminishing the people around you.
Yeah.
Not like I'm taking away from my clients if I have too many of them, but I'm also putting the burden on someone else when I come home, because now I don't feel like cooking or dishes or just cleaning up something that has to be cleaned up, because I feel so wasted. And I'm like, whatever, some person will do it.
Yeah.
And like
you should feel empowered after you teach, not drained.
Yes.
And it's a good feedback. Like if you feel drained, you probably took on too much, or even like in some cases, like personal training is a little bit different because it's just one-on-one, but in a class setting, it's like, I always do it as good feedback. It's like, if my throat's sore at the end of the day, I was talking too much. You know, it's like, I've learned this from Ito and some of his students. Like, there's a time to be a shitty teacher. And that's actually a really good teacher technique, especially with like stuff we do in the movement practice of like pattern recognition. Like, it's not necessarily, sometimes I won't explain anything. I'll just say, I'll literally say, I'm not going to say anything. Watch me and then do it. Because I'm not necessarily trying to teach the pattern. Because when I'm doing that, I'm obviously going to break it down and give you, I'm trying to teach pattern recognition. And to do that, I can't say anything.
Got it. I can't give away the clues.
Exactly. Or sometimes, especially a lot in like the movement practice, like some of the gems can only be like, I can't hand it to you, right? Yeah. I have to point you in the right direction, and then you have to have that light bulb moment. So in a lot of cases, I'll be like, I just won't say anything. I'll just say, I know you do this. I know you know how to do it. So do X, Y, Z, and then look to do A, B, C, and see what comes out of it. And then like, come back. Oh my God, I had this new thing that happened to me from which I've never experienced that before. So it's like, that really wasn't like on me. That was on them. Yeah. But it's like, oftentimes teachers are like, you know, I need to give this person all the things. But a lot of time, like, you got to put it on them. You know, you got to put it on the student a lot of time to unveil a new process. It's like, if you're doing programming, right? You can write this person an awesome program, but it's like, if they don't hold themselves accountable to do it, if you're doing like remote programming, they're never gonna make the results, right?
Not even just do it, but do it with intention and purpose.
And like really try to like execute each rep to the best of their not just running through the program to get it done, like really trying to improve with each session. Like, that's on them. Like, I can say that, but it's like, it's on them to do that. You can help
lead them down that road, for sure. By way of teaching and how you do it, how you relay the information.
Yeah,
it's crazy. All right, man. This is the time of the podcast. I always ask if you have any questions for me. That's usually the response.
So I'm just out of curiosity, like, what's your relationship with like meditation? Like, what does that mean to you? What does that look for you on a daily basis? Like, where do you want to take it?
When I first moved down here, I'll even start. So my last year of college, I really got into meditation, really got into breathing techniques, really got into intentional positional focus, and understanding that like you don't just move through the motions to move through the motions, but doing everything with intent and purpose. And waking up, make my bed, go to the bathroom, drink water, move, meditate, read my goal statement, go to my first class.
Nice.
And I was very rigid in that. Like, very rigid to the point where, like, I didn't want to be social because at night I wanted to do my specific
routine.
Yes. And
self-care
routine. All right, I got to brush my teeth. I got to get in bed. I'm going to do a Spanish lesson. I'm going to read my book. And I'm going to put my meditation music on. And I'm going to go to bed. And if you fuck that up, I'm pissed. Like, I'm so mad at you.
Oh, dude, I relate to that so much.
So then I moved down here, and I was meditating a lot because when I graduated, those 3 months that I was telling you about where I was still at home, I didn't work. I did like small gigs here and there, but I was not tied to a job whatsoever. So I had tons of time to practice my own movements and practice my own meditation. And it was the summer in Rhode Island. It was gorgeous. So I would go to different parks, or I would lay in a zero gravity chair in the backyard, and I would do different meditations. I would do Wim Hof breathing.
Nice.
I would do all sorts of different things. And I was very rigid, like 2-3 times a day sometimes. And then I moved down here, and it was the same way. I would wake up in the morning. I was in an apartment with Haley, and there was 1 bedroom, 1 bath, and I lived on a couch. So I had to I would wake up and do like a core routine, like on the yoga mat next to the couch that I slept on. Or I would wake up and I would like put my feet on the couch, and I would do my meditation with my head like underneath the coffee table. And I was getting very rigid with that. And then the more I got into working with clients and finding a job and doing all this, and I was driving Lyft and Uber and working with clients, then it became a status of like, okay, I'll wake up in the morning and I have clients too early and I'm going to bed too late, so I'm just gonna find time in between at some point to meditate. Whether that meant like I took my first client and went back in my car and I would like put some meditation music on and either meditate or fall asleep. So
either one holds a value.
Yeah, they both hold value. So the last year and a half has transitioned into all of that dissipating, and me the last 3-4 months has been like, find more time to do it, create more of a routine, get back into a happy medium of where I was in college, where I was miserable, and being more understanding of like, be flexible, but have certain bright lines that you will not go below. Yeah. Setting a standard that is status quo. There is fluctuation in what is optimal and what is minimal and what is not acceptable. And what I've been doing the last couple months has really not been acceptable from where I want to be. So meditation is like a good routine I always felt I've had for 4 years now, is just putting music on before bed. That's been the one thing from a meditation standpoint that I haven't lost. But then again, that's just really just like calming white noise that helps me gather thoughts and kind of go to sleep. Yeah. So
which still holds value, you know?
Yeah, for sure. But it's not the deep intention of
focusing inwards.
Of working through certain things and letting go of tensions based on emotions and past events or future predecessors. Because of working with Dr. Oleg, I've started to like really get my mind wrapped around that stuff again. Work through old family issues, right? Because your female left side is has to do with females in your life or past experiences. Yeah. Your right side having to do with the future, or the masculine side, the doing side. So understanding like, okay, if it's one part of my body here and one part of my body here, they're interconnected, right? That X pattern that we know. So how can I better meditate and move through those things and let them dissipate and move freely into the future, as opposed to with some sort of expectation or concept that might happen because it happened in the past, that kind of deal.
Stubborn on the destination, but flexible on the path.
Ooh, I like that. Stubborn on the destination, but flexible.
But meditating more.
Yeah.
But flexible in how you do it.
Yeah. I like that. Valid.
Because life changes, things fluctuate.
Yeah.
But you got your priorities, you're set, you want to do them, but you just got to be flexible on how you're going to achieve it.
And not be, even with like doing Spanish lessons and stuff like that I wanted to get back into, or reading more.
Marissa does the same thing. Sometimes it pisses me off. It's like, I'm getting ready to sit in our meditation. It's like, ding, you got it correct. I gotta get that 15 minutes of Duolingo every night. I respect it. She's learning the new language. And it's just like, good. Sometimes it's like, just at weird times, But you gotta get it in when you gotta get it.
You gotta get it in when you can. And like reading, Just doing that every night before bed, I lost that a little bit. So I'm getting that back. But it's an ebbs and flow, like no judgment on what I had to go through the last year and a half to now start to elevate.
Exactly. All part of the process, Sometimes, like I said, you need to take a break to realize how much you need it,
True. Yeah. Sometimes you need a nap, and then you're like, I just need like 10 minutes. And then 3 hours later, you're like, damn, I was really tired. No, that's so true, man. Well, thank you for coming on, dude.
Dude, it's my pleasure.
This was awesome.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
A full day together.
Yeah.
Only if you had come to yoga. That would have been wild.
Needed that 3-hour nap you're talking about.
And you got it.
Yeah.
Cool. So tell them where you can, if they want to like follow you.
Oh yeah, so you can check me out on Instagram. It's the Holistic Mover with underscores in between each word.
True. The Holistic Mover.
Yeah, that's the best way to reach me. So
cool.
Yeah. Awesome. Once again, thank you, brother.
Yeah, man. Thank you. This was great. Definitely listen through this again. There's a ton of gems in there. If you don't want to read all the yoga books, just listen to Finn talk about all the concepts in there. They're loose ends, but
yeah, a lot of interesting stuff in between the points too.
Yeah. So, I mean, I even learned a bunch. I'm thinking of so many different things that you talked about that were great. So
I appreciate it.
Super helpful. I definitely learned a ton, and I'll see you next week on Saturday.
Sounds good.
For another movement class.
Sounds good, brother.
For everyone listening, don't forget, show some love to Finn, and we are, life is limitless. Peace out.